I was right in front of the stage, directly in front of the stage. It was a normal rally. I've done it hundreds of times, and over my left shoulder, I heard several pops, and I knew immediately it was gunfire. At the moment I heard the shots being fired, I knew that this was a moment in American history that had to be documented. I mean, it's our job as journalists to do this work.
That was photojournalist from the Associated Press, Evan Vucci, doing it a long time. I covered 2016 with him. He was covering Donald Trump's rally when the assassination attempt took place, as he said. Also there was Boston Globe reporter James Pindell. He joins us now. James, it's really good to have you. I'm so glad you're okay. Tell us what it was like.
We had a lot of focus in your previous segment on the snipers and how the Secret Service snipers and how they were able to be so quick on the draw. And I know that's not exactly what you want to ask, but I think we should talk about it, because about 25 minutes before Trump began speaking, I was noticing them. There was a lot of activity. There's two Secret Service snipers. People probably seen them from the photos. They were pretty active looking at binoculars, and they flat out set up their guns in the correct direction. So I don't know what that means. I'm not going to speculate. It's inappropriate to do that. But apparently, for whatever reason, they had those guns in that direction. Now, after a while, they started to calm down. I was like, oh, yeah, you know what? That's the access road for a lot of the folks coming to the rally. Maybe that's where the motorcade was. Maybe they were just going to track it to make sure that everything's fine and all that. But I didn't really think of it. But the first time I actually heard shots, I thought they were coming from those snipers, and I actually thought it was proactive. Again, anyone who's been in a car wreck, time slows down. So when I say the tick-tock of things, we're talking about 3 or 4 or 5 seconds. It was very, very quick. So there's not a time to process of, oh my gosh, is this really happening? It's what is actually happening. And I saw the smoke from the snipers. And it wasn't until Trump got up with the Secret Service and I saw blood that I even thought anything even was incoming towards the rally. Again, I thought it was proactive.
So you had your eyes on these snipers. They caught your attention before any of this happened. And when you heard those shots, that's the first place you looked.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it was, you can see that I was standing right in front of the TV cameras, or I was sitting actually. The TV cameras, that's where the shade was. It's a really hot, really super sunny day. And I was typing, so I was not looking right at the former president, but then I looked up and I could see some smoke from the snipers, and that's where I thought, oh, this is only outgoing, not incoming.
When you realized it was incoming, when you saw Donald Trump down on the ground, then rise up with blood on his ear, what was your thought then?
Oh my goodness, but he's alive. He obviously, you saw him mouthing something to the crowd, so he was coherent, because we had no idea what was happening. I'll say, Katie, you and I, we've seen each other at rallies a lot. People say, did you ever imagine this could happen? Yeah, I imagine it every single rally I go to. It's a concern. And I don't know how you feel, but at every single rally, this is a possibility. We're in America where there's mass shootings nonstop. We're deeply politically polarized. And I'll be honest, I thought it could happen there when I was there. I was like, wow, this is open air. I didn't imagine it. It was a quick thought. It wasn't much there, but my wife is always concerned. Are you safe? It was not an improbable thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, my producer, when I would want to leave after he was done speaking, but he was still talking to people in the crowd or was still on premises, would tell me, no, just in case something happens, God forbid there's an assassination attempt, you got to stay until he's gone. And this was exactly the scenario that you don't want to happen, but you prepare for when you're in those situations. James, so once you realized he was okay, got escorted from Secret Service, there was blood on his ear, how long did it take before you and the crowd realized that it wasn't just former President Trump, but that it was somebody else in the crowd, a few more people who were shot, including one fatally?
That's right. I left with a lot of people. The crowd quickly turned on the press looking for someone to blame, but that was a small group. Most people left calmly. They were crying, all that. They had no idea that someone actually had been killed. I did not know as I was leaving that happened. There were ambulances that were rushing by me, but I had no context exactly what was happening. So it wasn't until I'd say 5 or 6 minutes afterwards. And look, I'm a reporter. We get information quickly. But I think most people had no idea until they got back in their car or maybe until they got back home.
Joining us now by phone, CNBC's Joe Kernan, who just spoke with former President Trump. Joe, it's good to have you. What did the former president tell you?
He was on the mend. He was in very good spirits. He said, except for this, you know how he talks, this little problem in my ear and his right ear. Other than that, he said, you probably heard about it. I said, yeah. And he goes, other than that, everything's great. And he was glad that he had turned his head, he told me at the last minute.
Was he introspective at all about the moment?
I've known him a long time, and it wasn't an interview that I was doing. It was more of a personal call. So introspective in the sense that I said nobody really knows how you're going to react with something like that. And I said that I thought it was, pretty courageous. And I wanted to know what he was feeling at the moment before he stood up and why he thought it was important for him to raise his fist and say, fight, fight. And what was he actually talking about? And he said to just carry on with what he's trying to do and, for lack of a better term, to make America great.
Did you ask him about whether there were any changes in plans for the RNC, changes in what he might say at the RNC?
He's when I do speak to him, and it's not that often, but I don't know how many people he talks to, but it's usually about a 2 or 3 minute call.
Yeah.
So he was more approachable. He was in great spirits. He one of the things that he mentioned was he was gratified by all of the wishes of support and encouragement that he was getting, and he emphasized from both sides of the aisle. And he said, I've heard from people that I wasn't expecting to hear from, and it was really, I don't know, he was very gracious about it and was very. He wanted to stress that he heard from, I guess, Democrats and people he wasn't expecting to hear from.
He spoke to President Biden, at least for a moment yesterday. President Biden has described their conversation as cordial. Did he tell you anything about speaking to President Biden?
Nope, didn't talk about that. It was like I said, it ran about 3 minutes, which is actually pretty long, 3 or 4 minutes. And, the other stuff was personal and, about my family. He knows my kids, knows my wife. And my wife, we were watching live yesterday when it happened. And we were shook. We were shook. My wife was literally hysterical and we're still trying to process all of it. And, a couple of millimeters or centimeters, and I don't know what that would have been like. Sometimes I think we get to see a little bit too much in real time now.
Yeah, including the bullet itself in a photo by Doug Mills of the New York Times going right past his head. You're right to say a couple.
If I'd been you, and it was going to be an interview, Katie, I would have written down some questions, but that. And I didn't, call like, anyone and say I want to talk about it. I just tweeted it out that he's in good spirits. And so it was more of a personal call than.
No, I understand.
I'm not trying to give you anything. But yeah. For my own, I wanted to know, I don't know how I would react. I like to think I'd, cover my kids, cover my wife, try to get in the way. But I wanted to know what he was thinking and how the first thing he thought was to stand up. And because at that point, I think I mentioned that to him, that at that point, you don't know if there's a second shooter. You don't know if the first shooter's done in, the fog of whatever you want to call it. And he was kind of totally exposed. And, I thought that maybe if in his mind he thought the last thing I'm going to be known for is that I was kind of saying keep fighting. So I wanted to hear what his what his mental attitude was right at that time, because I don't know what mine. I might have still been on the floor. I don't know.
You got to imagine that adrenaline rushed through him in that moment, but then coming down from it, the feeling of, oh my gosh, but for the turn of my head, I could not be here any longer. Joe Kernan, thank you for talking to me. I know it wasn't an interview, but it is certainly interesting to hear.
International reactions are also pouring in after the attempt on Donald Trump's life. NBC's Danielle Hamamdjian is joining us with more on this. Danielle, what are world leaders saying?
Yeah, reaction has been coming in from presidents, prime ministers, world leaders from Europe, the Middle East, and Asia, all united in condemning all forms of political violence. Some of the first leaders to send their prayers to Donald Trump are some of his closest allies on the world stage. I'm referring to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, as well as the Hungarian prime minister, Viktor Orban, who in fact had missed the last day of the NATO summit in Washington to fly to Florida to meet with Donald Trump just 2 days before the attack. I'm going to run through some of the statements that have been coming in from world leaders overnight and this morning, starting with Keir Starmer, the newly elected prime minister here in the UK, saying he was appalled by the shocking scenes at President Trump's rally and that political violence in any form has no place in our societies. Giorgia Meloni, the right-wing prime minister of Italy, saying she expressed her hope that in the following months of the campaign, dialogue and responsibility, she said, can prevail over hate and violence. President Erdogan of Turkey saying that he believes an investigation into the attack will be carried out in the most effective way, and in order not to cast a shadow on the U.S. elections and global stability. Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, said that he was deeply concerned by the attack on his friend and former President Donald Trump, strongly condemning the incident. Violence, he says, has no place in politics and democracies. Again, messages coming in. Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, calling the attack despicable. The Polish President, Andrzej Duda, saying that this is a shocking moment, not only for America, but for the entire free and democratic world. Anything that happens on U.S. soil, of course, has ramifications around the world. If and how this is going to change the political climate certainly will be watched very closely by global leaders.
Danielle Hamamdjian, thank you for bringing us that reporting.
Joining me now is Erin Houghton-Ruth. She is a longtime supporter of Donald Trump, was sitting in the front row when those shots rang out. Erin, first of all, how are you doing today?
Okay. It's hitting me a little bit more today than yesterday.
Yeah.
Just the significance of it. And I was a volunteer at the rally, so I was there at 6:45 in the morning. And I was working in the tent for the media, checking them in, checking them out. This is the third rally I've worked at, the sixth rally I've attended. So I kind of knew the lay of the land. And once the gates opened, the morning people that worked at the rally could go in first. So I'd gone earlier to see what the venue looked like. And the women I was working with, I said, let's go up this way. And we got into the first row. And I was seated directly in front of President, well, at that point, it was just the podium, directly in front of the podium. So when President Trump entered the stage from the left-hand side from me, he walked on, and then in front of him were all the photographers that were taking pictures. But then the Secret Service moved the photographers over to the right side, and he spoke. I thought it was 4 to 5 minutes. I think now they're saying it was 6 minutes. He said, can we go off track here? I'm going to put up a visual. And there was one on the right side and one on the left side. And he turned his head to the visual, and I heard out of my left ear 4 pops. Pop, 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 pop. But it sounded so much like firecrackers. And I thought somebody must be still having them for the 4th of July, like a party or something in the neighborhood. But he stopped talking. He crouched down. And then I saw that the 4 Secret Service pushed him down. Then over to the right, those photographers were all in a heap on the ground, like 5 of them. No one was moving. Then the guys came with the bulletproof vests and the long guns up on the stage, and they started to say, check right, check left. And then I heard them say, pick him up. So he came up and he was facing forward. I saw the blood on the cheek, and I heard President Trump say, "I need my shoes." So they must have fallen off when they pushed him down. Then he exited the stage opposite the way he entered. So when he turned to the right, that's when I saw the blood from the top of the ear to the bottom. Wasn't as much as they're showing on that picture right now, but by the time they had walked the 4 or 5 steps to the steps where he went down, more blood came out. But then, he raised his hand up and said, fight. But I could tell from his face that he was okay. But my thought was, when they pushed him to the ground, they must have hurt his ear, because I did not think he was shot at that time. And when they put him in the car, and then all of a sudden the photographers started to come up one by one, I thought, oh, okay, good, everybody's okay. And nobody in that first row ran, moved, sat down, did anything. We were in shock. We were almost like a barrier to protect the president. Everybody was standing. And then when people started to exit behind me in the second row, I saw McCormick. Then behind him was the gentleman from Rico Elmore from Beaver. His white shirt had blood all the way down the side of it.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.